It was just another hectic Friday afternoon at McDonald's. Sarah had barely finished tying her apron when the bell over the door jingled, signaling another wave of customers. Her shift had just started, and already she felt the weight of exhaustion settling in. The heat from the fryer made the air thick and greasy, and the sound of burgers sizzling on the grill mixed with the constant chatter of the lunch rush. She ran a hand through her messy hair, checking the line of orders hanging above the counter. It was the usual crowd: families, teenagers, office workers in suits, and tourists looking for a quick bite. It had been like this for hours, and it wasn't slowing down. "Next," Sarah called, her voice a mix of fatigue and impatience. A woman stepped up to the counter, looking unremarkable. Mid-30s, dark sunglasses perched on her nose, wearing a simple jacket and jeans. Sarah barely looked at her, too tired to notice anything unusual. "Hi, I'll have a cheeseburger, fries, and a soda," the woman said, her voice calm, unassuming. Sarah punched the order into the register, barely paying attention as she glanced over at the kitchen. The rush was constant, and her mind was scattered with the list of tasks she still needed to get done. She gave the woman a half-hearted nod. "Anything else?" Sarah asked, hoping she'd just get a simple order and move on. "No, that'll be it," the woman replied. Sarah handed the receipt over, still barely looking up. The woman took it and stood off to the side. Sarah turned to the kitchen, focusing on the next order in line. As she handed the woman's order to the kitchen staff, Sarah found herself muttering to a colleague, "Man, some people are so boring with their choices. Like, cheeseburger, fries, not even a milkshake or something exciting." Her colleague laughed quietly, agreeing. "Yeah, I thought rich people were supposed to eat fancy stuff, not McDonald's." Sarah chuckled, turning back to the counter. She didn't know why she had said it, but in the chaos of the rush, it seemed harmless. She wasn't even sure why she thought the woman could be rich. Maybe it was the sunglasses, or the way she carried herself. In Sarah's mind, though, it didn't matter. She was just another customer, another nameless face in the crowd. The woman walked away with her food, and Sarah watched her for a brief moment, a vague sense of familiarity creeping into her mind. But it was fleeting. Her eyes darted back to the counter, and she pushed the thought aside. "Probably seen her on TV or something," Sarah muttered to herself. She didn't give it another thought as she moved to the next task. It was a busy day, and Sarah was too tired to linger on anything that didn't directly involve getting orders out. The rush was relentless. Sarah moved between the counter, the register, and the kitchen with mechanical precision, her mind barely engaged. The hum of the restaurant, the clinking of trays, and the constant beeping of the register blurred together. As Sarah punched in another order, she noticed a woman with a simple cheeseburger meal standing by the pickup counter, waiting for her food. She was just standing there quietly, nothing special about her. Sarah wasn't sure why, but something about the whole situation felt odd. Maybe it was a lack of any grand gesture, no special request, just the plain, unremarkable nature of the meal. She turned to her colleague, Ellie, who was stacking napkins by the condiment station. "Ugh," Sarah muttered with a sigh. "Some people are so basic. I mean, it's just a cheeseburger, fries, and a soda. Doesn't even look like she's trying." Ellie looked over with a smirk, her voice low, so the woman wouldn't hear, though it was unlikely she would. "Guess she's one of those people who don't need to show off. But, yeah, kind of boring, right? I thought rich people ate caviar, not McDonald's." Sarah snickered, wiping her hands on her apron. What a boring order. I bet she's the type to have a salad for lunch and then complain about carbs later. No excitement at all. It's like she's too good for a fancy meal. What a waste. Both of them laughed. Sarah's voice was louder than she intended, a little too unguarded. It felt good to vent after the tension of the lunch crowd, but she didn't think about the words as they left her mouth. The woman glanced up briefly from where she stood by the counter, catching Sarah's laugh, but said nothing. Sarah didn't notice, too distracted by the next orders coming in. She could feel the weight of the greasy fries in her hands, the routine that was beginning to wear on her. But as the woman turned to leave, Sarah caught her again in the corner of her eye. This time, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something about her that felt oddly familiar. Is she like a news anchor? Or someone I've seen at a gala? Sarah thought, her eyes squinting as the woman walked past. The thought was fleeting, but it lingered for a moment. Still, Sarah didn't take the time to dig deeper into her thoughts. The woman walked out of the restaurant with her bag of food, and Sarah moved on to the next order, trying to shake off the small curiosity that had begun to buzz in her head. The kitchen buzzed with activity, and Sarah's attention was pulled back into the frenzy. It was just another day at work. The restaurant began to settle into a rhythm again after the rush. The line had thinned out, and the workers were taking small moments to catch their breath. The sizzling of fries and the hum of the fryers were still in the background, but now the noise felt less frantic, more manageable. Sarah was wiping down the counter when she noticed the woman again. She was standing near the door, her back turned to the kitchen, as though waiting for something or someone. For a moment, Sarah's brain ticked through the list of usual customers. Tourists, regulars, families, the usual crowd. But this woman, the one who'd ordered the plain cheeseburger and fries, something about her seemed familiar. Sarah didn't immediately make the connection. She couldn't. There was something in her gut that felt like she should know this woman, but she couldn't place her. She looked ordinary enough. No flashy jewelry or high-end clothes. Just a plain jacket and jeans. She wasn't a tourist or anyone she recognized from around town. Yet there was something about the way she carried herself, the confidence without drawing attention. As the woman turned to leave, Sarah caught a glimpse of her face one more time. This time, there was a lingering sensation, a strange feeling of recognition that wouldn't go away. I swear I've seen her before, Sarah muttered under her breath, her mind buzzing. She tried to place it. A model? A famous actress? A former news anchor? But none of those made sense. She had seen so many faces over the years. None of them had ever made her feel this, unsettled. But the feeling passed as quickly as it came. The woman walked out of the door, her meal in hand, and Sarah turned back to her work. Maybe I've seen her on TV, Sarah thought again, dismissing the feeling. She probably looks like someone important, but whatever. She shook her head, dismissing the thought completely, and moved on to the next customer who needed attention. The strange sense of familiarity still lingered in the back of her mind, but Sarah had long since learned to shrug off these little moments of unease. There were too many things to focus on to dwell on them. Sarah was wiping down the counter, absent-mindedly glancing at the TV mounted above the kitchen. The lunchtime rush was finally over, and the place had quieted down. She caught a glimpse of a breaking news headline. Melania Trump spotted dining in McDonald's. Her heart stopped. The screen cut to a live shot of Melania Trump, the former First Lady, smiling and walking through a McDonald's parking lot. Suddenly, everything clicked. Sarah's mind raced back to the woman she had just served, the plain cheeseburger, the unremarkable appearance, the odd familiarity, and now, the face on the TV, Melania Trump. No way, Sarah whispered under her breath, her eyes wide as she stared at the screen. Her pulse quickened. She replayed the earlier exchange in her mind. The laugh, the joke about the boring order. Did she hear it? Did she overhear Sarah mocking her? Her stomach dropped, and she felt the world shift beneath her. The woman she just joked about was Melania Trump, and she just unknowingly insulted her. Sarah froze, still staring at the TV, her mind racing. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the TV, the image of Melania Trump flashing across the screen in crisp HD. The reality of what had just happened hit her like a freight train. What if she heard me? The thought looped endlessly in Sarah's mind. She imagined Melania's expression turning cold, her staff reporting back on the rude waitress who had mocked her meal. The media would love to spin it into a headline. Waitress insults Melania Trump in McDonald's. Her hands trembled as she wiped down the counter again, mind racing through 1,000 scenarios. What if Melania decided to post something about it? What if there was a video? I'm screwed, Sarah muttered under her breath. She paced nervously in the back, scanning the restaurant. She wanted to disappear, but there was nowhere to hide. The thought of facing any backlash made her stomach twist with dread. Do you think she heard me? Sarah whispered to Ellie, who was restocking napkins. Ellie shrugged, trying to reassure her. Probably not. I mean, it was just a joke, right? But Sarah wasn't so sure. The weight of her mistake gnawed at her, and the idea of Melania somehow hearing those words, those careless words, made her feel sick. The rest of Sarah's shift passed in a haze. She couldn't stop thinking about the moment she realized who the woman was. Her mind kept replaying the laugh, the comment about the boring order, and the familiar face that she had failed to recognize. As soon as the clock ticked closer to the end of her shift, Sarah's anxiety hit its peak. She couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to apologize right now. Without thinking, she darted to the front of the restaurant, her eyes scanning for Melania. She half expected her to still be there, maybe sitting at a table or waiting for her driver to arrive. But no one stood out in the crowd. Her heart sank. The woman was gone. Sarah's gaze swept across the parking lot through the window. There, parked under the trees, was a black SUV. Melania had already left. Maybe I should go after her, Sarah thought, her breath quickening. But then, a voice of reason stopped her. Would that make it worse? Her feet were rooted to the spot as the idea of running after the car flickered in her mind, but something held her back. She wasn't sure what to do anymore, just that the chance for a direct apology was slipping away, and with it, her last hope to make it right. The next morning, Sarah awoke to the buzz of her phone. She groggily reached for it, still half asleep, and blinked at the screen. Notifications from social media flooded in, tweets, retweets, and headlines. Then one tweet caught her eye. A picture of a McDonald's cheeseburger, fries, and a soda. Beneath it, Melania Trump's own caption read, "Sometimes, you just need to go back to the basics." The tweet had gone viral. Sarah's stomach dropped. She stared at the tweet, confused, trying to piece together what it meant. The photo was the exact same order she had served her, the boring one, the one she had mocked with Ellie the day before. The comments flooded in, half of them praising Melania's down-to-earth choice of food, others joking about how even the rich like a good cheeseburger. Sarah's mind spun. Was this Melania's response to her? Her pulse quickened. Could she be making light of what happened, or was it a subtle dig? The panic Sarah had felt earlier started to shift, replaced with a strange mix of confusion and disbelief. The post had no mention of the incident at the McDonald's itself. There was no apology from Melania, no backlash either. It seemed almost playful. For a moment, Sarah considered the idea that maybe Melania hadn't been bothered at all. Maybe she wasn't even aware of the offhand comments Sarah had made. Or maybe, just maybe, she was responding to it with a bit of humor. Sarah let out a relieved breath. Okay, maybe this wasn't the disaster I thought it was. As Sarah scrolled through her phone, reading the thousands of reactions to Melania's tweet, she couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and embarrassment. She had spent the entire night tossing and turning, imagining a headline about her thoughtless comment. Instead, the world had reacted in a way she hadn't expected. Light-hearted and mostly positive. In the days that followed, Sarah reflected on the entire incident. She couldn't help but laugh at herself. She had let her frustration and exhaustion cloud her judgment. A simple joke, shared between her and Ellie, had spiraled into a potential disaster, all because of her careless assumptions about a customer. She sat down with her co-workers during a break, sharing the viral tweet with them. They all chuckled, and Sarah felt herself relax. Guess Melania Trump isn't as serious as I thought, Sarah joked. Yeah, looks like she can laugh at herself too, Ellie said with a wink. Sarah nodded, the tension finally easing from her shoulders. It was a good reminder to stay humble. You never know who's watching, and sometimes the people you least expect might surprise you. The lesson was clear. Never judge a book by its cover, or a customer by their cheeseburger order. And most importantly, Sarah swore she would never underestimate anyone again, no matter how ordinary they seemed.